everybody. This is Nathaniel Provencio coming in from a red-eye flight from San Francisco. Eric, do you do red-eye flights? You ever done a red-eye
I,
flight?
I have. I don't love them, but on
Oh, it's
occasion I do.
it's tough. I might just pass out, but we got Lexi Hudson and Bash
Hey,
on the community connection. What's going on, Miss Hudson? Mommy, how you doing? What's
Funny,
going on?
funny kisses for the guys. We just learned to blow some kisses. Just there we go.
There
Excuse
you go. There you
yeah.
go.
Yes, great to be here. Thank you, Eric and Nathaniel. A pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Lexi, I got to promise you that we're not going to be polite on the show, but we promise to be civil. I hope that is okay.
I'll accept it. I will accept it.
All right. Very, very good. Very, very good. So, Dr. Worcester, you want to start us off?
sure. So, Alexandra, your career has been very diverse and unique. How did those experiences shape how you think about civility?
Yeah, my thoughts on civility predate my working years, my vocational years. My mom is kind of an etiquette expert. It's, kind of runs in the family, blood, if you will. But my mom, her name is Judy the Manners Lady. And as I learned while writing this book, she's one of 4 women who are international experts on manners and etiquette named Judy. And my working theory as to why this is The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland was
Yeah.
kind of iconic during the time. And that, I think a generation of mothers named their daughters Judy or Judith. And a small subsection of those decided to go into manners and etiquette, including my mother. So my mother is my favorite of the Judiths in the etiquette.
Good.
Biz.
Well, that's important.
The most famous is maybe Judith Martin, the longtime Washington Post columnist who goes by Miss Manners. And so my mom, she raised my brothers and I to be polite, to mind our P's and Q's, how to sit at the table, how to greet people, how to make introductions, how to shake hands. And, I don't like rules. I don't like being told what to do. I think that's very much a reason why I work for myself now, and I don't work in an institution or kind of a structured environment. But I remember growing up, my mother would tell me, how to sit at the table just so. And I would say, why? Why do we sit at the table like this? Why are we using forks and knives at all? And, as a rebellious toddler, every mother's dream, kind of asking these deep philosophical questions, and like what is the reason of social norms, the purpose behind them? Other cultures, they eat with not forks, but with their hands. Other cultures don't greet with eye contact and a handshake, but a bow, and diverting eye contact is the respectful thing to do. So given these, changeable realities, why do we do things the way we do them? So I never got answers to these questions. My mother was like, just do what I'm telling you to do. And so I followed her rules, but always kind of had these questions lurking in the back of my mind. So my book is kind of a product of a lifetime of thought and reflection on these questions of our social norms and how they serve this joint project of living well with others. These questions kind of persisted. And ultimately, you mentioned Tyler Cowen before our conversation. He told me not to write this book. He said to me, I was in federal government. I was at the United States Department of Education, and I was like in the heart of division and darkness and very despondent at the state of our country and our public discourse. And I told Tyler, who was a friend, I said, I have this book I want to write. And he said, don't write a book. He's like, there are easier paths to fame and fortune if that's your goal. He's like, don't write a book, only write a book if you have a disease and writing this book is the cure. Like you have to want it that badly. And that could very much be said to be the state of my condition, but that I had to write this book. I couldn't not do it. Like even today, people ask me like, oh, like you have 3 kids. Like, how did you write a book? I don't know how it happened. It's a miracle. It's miraculous, but it could not happen. It just had to. It's like inside of me, it had to be out, and I'm grateful. It's done. It's over. You have something to say? Yeah, I know. He wants the sharp knife. Sorry,
Oh, of
guys.
course.
So anyway, how did my experiences shape my vocation? Like my upbringing, my father's a philosopher and a cinematographer, and he always, he would read to me about Plato's theory of the forms at night. And I always asking, thank you. Always asking questions, always hungering for the why behind things and thinking big thoughts. So those 2 things combined certainly led to this book.
All
And I
right.
would like to see this almost, sorry, I'm gonna hold it up
Yep.
right, everybody. This almost reads as a philosophy book.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Throughout, you are quoting, and also a linguistic study, because it's both a philosophical book and a linguistic study, because throughout you're talking about word origins and
Yes.
you're listing a lot of famous philosophers.
I wrote a book that tried to give people a framework for how to respect the dignity of the human being
Mm,
in ways that are timeless, in ways that people have independently discovered across time and place as a fundamental foundation for the good life. This joint project of freedom and flourishing. That is
yeah.
something especially true in a democracy, but you know, even these principles stand the test of time in other arrangements, other political
Mm.
arrangements as well.
Wow. That, something in the book that stood out to me was you took these two disparate cultural pieces, like the Epic of Gilgamesh
Mm.
and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and you sort of made some connections. I'm curious because that's a bit of a reach, but you made it work. So can you just explain that a little bit? Epic of Gilgamesh, Curb Your Enthusiasm?
So I wanted to write, I worked really hard on this book. It was a lifetime of thought, a decade of work. And I said, how do I write a book that stands the test of time in a world that's changing so quickly? How do I do that? And the answer I came to was grounded in timeless texts and
Mm,
timeless ideas, texts that have stood the test of time, like Homer's Odyssey, like, you know, the oldest book in the world, the Maxims of Ptahhotep, given to us from ancient Egypt,
mm,
2350 BC, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, this oldest story in the world from ancient Sumeria, the cradle of civilization. Um, and so that was my aspiration there. And well, first of all, harnessing the power of stories to render these ideas
mm.
for my audience. I knew that was a service I could do to both the ideas and my audience to keep people reading and interested. Um, as far as Larry David is concerned, I'm a big fan. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. Funnily enough, I've never gotten into Seinfeld. I haven't tried that hard,
Mm.
but maybe I could give it another go one day. But Curb is funny. It's fun. It's cringy. It's a comedy of
Mhm.
manners. You know, Larry David is, I argue that he is the foremost defender of civilization today because he is everyone's inner ego and inner id. And it's because of like he does the things and says the things that we sometimes think when people are being rude and obnoxious, but we never actually do because, you know, we have social shame, which he does not. You know,
Yeah.
there's like virtually no line. There's no gap between what he wants and what he does, what he thinks and what he says. It's just like he is all out there all the time, whereas
I love it.
we hold back. It's so funny, exactly. But the reality is because he is willing to do and say the things that many of us are not going to do, like he holds people accountable. Like I talk about him in this chapter on freedom and flourishing, that we have formal institutions, we have, you know, laws, we have the judiciary, we have these institutions that that protect our rights and freedoms, but we also have informal norms and laws that are not sanctioned, where they're not punishable by jail time or fine,
Hmm.
but they're just as important to uphold a free and flourishing society. It's the kind of things like, you know, don't double park. Like, yes, you can get a ticket for that, but also Larry David is watching and he will find you. He will follow you into Starbucks and he will say, excuse me, sir, although he won't be that polite. He will say, get back
Sure.
in the car and you do it correctly because this is society, sir. You know, like you just don't get to do that.
Yes.
And so too many Larry Davids would be a rather intolerable world, but a few
Mm,
of them, they're good accountability. They're good watchdogs. You know, I tell the story in my book of the politeness campaign of Michael Bloomberg, where all of a sudden
mm.
overnight, all
Yep.
these petty indecencies that, you know, maybe there aren't enough Larry Davids in New York, which is funny because I think he's from New York originally.
Exactly.
But anyway, Michael Bloomberg decided that civility had reached a fever pitch, and all of a sudden, overnight, common indecencies were outlawed, like spitting on the street, gross things like that, or texting in a movie theater, or taking a phone call in a Broadway musical, or shouting at your kid's baseball game. All of a sudden, you could be fined for these things and theoretically put in jail for these things that were just previously just annoyances, common indecencies. And, you know, understandably, New Yorkers didn't like being civilized by their local government. And
Sure.
so it didn't last long. And also because we don't live in a police state, these laws were impossible to enforce.
Mm,
And that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing that we are not micromanaged by local and national authorities at every day. Like other parts of the world are. They have like
Yes.
Chinese social credit system. Like you are
mhm.
scored in every interaction on your pro-sociality, which is, you know, bonkers to think of. So anyway, given that we don't have this police state to enforce and micromanage our everyday social interactions, a few Larry Davids to keep people in check. That it's like the classic free rider problem. Most people follow the rules, but it means that, you know, people who don't are sometimes going to get away with it. And the Larry Davids of the world make sure that doesn't happen. They're going to call you out and they're going to make sure you do your
It's
part,
awesome.
part of this.
Love it. Well, it's a great connection. It's a great connection. I love it. I love it.
Lexi, I want to shift just for a moment from I'm going to stay with the Bloomberg lane and stay with leaders. You mentioned you're from Indianapolis. You mentioned President Benjamin Harrison. I've been to that house, Nathaniel. It's a great museum. I like
You've
to
been
all
to
the
Indianapolis. So nice.
Yes, I like going to all the presidential houses and museums. That's one thing that I do. In your book, you talk about front porches versus patios. Can you contrast the importance of those two things and what you mean by just having people do more porching and less patioing?
Well, first of all, you guys are very welcome. Consider this an official and standing invitation to come porch with us sometime.
We're doing it.
Midwest, come porch with us. So porching is important. To my story personally, I fled Washington, D.C. I was so disheartened by, yes, the US Department of Education, but also just government in D.C. more broadly. And I came home from one day and said to my husband, I am done with D.C. I'm done with toxic politics. Let's move to Indiana. And my husband's from Indiana originally. We had talked about moving here one day to raise a family of our own. My husband looks at me and smiles and says, okay, sounds good. We'll move to Indiana. No takebacks. And a few months later, we'd moved out here. That was 7-8 years ago now. So we move out here. We didn't know anyone. All my husband's family is kind of northern Indiana, northwest Indiana. And we attended church. And, one of our very first Sundays, a tall blonde woman comes up to me and says, hi, I'm Joanna Taft. Would you like to porch with us sometime?
Oh, that's cool.
And I had never heard the word porch used as a verb before, but we
Mhm.
were home that day. And I realized that, there's a quiet and subversive revolution happening on Joanna's front porch, that I had just come from Washington where things were all politics all day. And on
Yep.
Joanna's porch, there were no politics. In fact, there were people there across race, across politics, across geography, across religion. But it was just an oasis from these deep divisions in our world. And she was staging in a world where we're isolated. She was, bringing us together and convening us. Um, and she, along with, countless other people that I've met on book tour, 100 cities, 5 countries, are collectively but individually saying, I can't control who's in the White House. I can't control who's president, or whether even or who's mayor, and whether my roads get paved in the winter, plowed in the winter, but I can control myself, and I'm going to make my society better and more beautiful right where I am. So this metaphor of the porch as this theory of social change is important. And it's interesting because people are reclaiming it. So there's this famous essay, to your point, Eric, your question, by Richard H. Thomas, in a now defunct essay called The Palimpsest, outlet called The Palimpsest. And it's called From Front Porch to Patio. And in this book, in this essay, sorry, he talks about how 100 years ago, homes like Joanna's, like mine, they were built with these great big front verandas, these outer terraces. And that architectural trend marked a social value. The social value was presence. It was other orientedness. It was communitarianism. It was, the porch was a place where you sat, you unwound, you said hi to your neighbors and strangers, friends alike. And it was very much a social statement. And then over the last century, though, the front porch slowly shifted to the side of the house, then to the back, into the modern day patio. And that too tracked a cultural shift in values, one from other orientedness, presence and community rootedness, outward facing, to individualism, growing individualism, where we're now, we have fences. We invite who we want into the privacy of our back patio. Just friends, neighbors. It's more curatorial as opposed to the just strangers passing, whoever happens to pass by. And so it's interesting that's a famous essay that was written, several decades ago about from front porch to patio. But now we're seeing the revolution of the front porch once again. And in fact, there's this very famous architectural festival every year in Venice. And they featured the American front porch as the iconic architectural symbol. And so it's just, there's this porching comeback happening right now. Ground zero of which is in Indianapolis with a satellite in Venice, apparently. And so yeah, do come porch with us sometime.
Well, we will. Lexi, I was talking with my wife about this when we were kind of looking at our notes, and I was talking with my wife, who is from Brazil, about this concept of porches and patios. And I said, I said, can you name me any neighbors that you remember from your time growing up in Sao Paulo? And she was like, yeah, Thiago, Claudia, Benicio. She listed like 30 people, just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, all right, I think I can list like 5 neighbors, right? And then I asked Eric, and Eric, how many neighbors you got, Eric? How many neighbors can you name?
One confidently, and I'm in a townhouse.
And he's in a townhouse, right?
We've
So
got
I've
some
got
very
like
close neighbors.
I've got Mr. and Miss Baker beside me, I've got Rick. So like and I'm never home and it's funny because I'm also Lexi a bit of an introvert too. Like I like my space and I like my time and I like my quiet. But it's interesting culturally that I just found that so different that maybe is this American thing where we're more isolated, where maybe other cultures they're more inviting. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the cultural aspect of porching.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Um, one thing I observe is that like the porch is a metaphor. Yes,
Mm,
it's a architectural statement that tracks a social statement. But as I've seen on book tour, and there are people with no porch, but they have a front dock, or they have a stoop, or they have a front lawn. They have supper clubs in their dining room. That these are all, or my grandmother, for example, had a front like a front sort of terrace that she just loved to sit and watch and wave and invite people into friendship from her front. The porch is a metaphor for a way of life, and the way of
yeah.
is civility, transforming outsider to insider, stranger into friend, just having this openness. I'd love to talk about, I have an essay I want to write about spontaneity and how overscheduled and regimented we are. I think it's an offshoot of our hyper utilitarian society and efficient society. And like,
Sure.
let's talk about efficiency and utilitarianism in school. I have lots of thoughts on
Yeah.
for example, but like, porching is antithetical to that. You have no idea who you're going to see. You're there for its own sake. And it's a totally non-utilitarian activity and endeavor that is revolutionary.
One more question.
Yeah.
This is for Eric and Lexi. Lexi, I'll start with you. Do you porch on a plane?
It's funny. No, I think my grandma and my mother, I think all her sisters, they all porch on planes because they have never sat next to another human being on a plane in their entire life
Mm.
that they have not, had a conversation with, learned their entire life story, and probably shared an Uber ride home together. I'm serious. Yeah, it is a lifestyle. Absolutely.
Do you, Lexi, do you porch on a plane?
I I don't.
Oh, come
I'm so
on.
utilitarian when I
Thank you, Lexi.
travel.
I'm there
I am
too.
like, I am here on a mission.
Yeah,
I'm conserving my energy. I need to probably sleep.
I gotta be
Sleep.
civil.
I
I'm gonna be
know.
civil, Lexi, and I'm gonna
I'm
call
there
you
with
out
you.
on this, okay?
I
You
know.
got to porch on a plane. I've had the best conversations. I usually have better conversations in first class than I do in coach. First class people, that ride first class, they like to talk about why they're in first class. Coach folks just want to just, shut the hell up and just, just leave me alone. But even as an introvert, I force myself to porch on planes because
No.
I have the best conversations. Sometimes they'll tell me to shut up, but okay, that's our homework. That's our community connection homework. We're gonna porch on the plane. All right.
Eric, Eric, did Nathaniel just say he was an introvert? In
He
what
did.
universe do I believe that? I am not persuaded
Uh-huh. He
at
does say that.
all.
He
I'm a
does say that a lot.
functional introvert, Lexi. I'm a
I
functional.
don't know. I don't know. I'm not persuaded. So I mean, there's so many excuses that I could point to, like how modern air travel, you're treated like human chattel,
Mm,
and like it's just intentionally degrading, so people fork out and do the walk of shame, through first class. It's so funny. Yeah, my friend Nathan Robinson, who is the editor of this socialist magazine called Current Affairs, he had this funny article on first class once. Like it was like he's like a sociologist, Harvard
mm.
sociologist at heart, and then he was a classmate of my husband's at Yale Law School. But he did this sociological exploration of first class and the why behind it. And it's like, why do people pay money for first class? So everyone else walking through sees them.
Exactly.
Everyone does the walk of shame from first class into coach and gets
Yeah.
to see that they're in first class. Like if they boarded last, like maybe fewer people would do it. So
Maybe.
anyway, there's so many excuses. I'm tired, and I don't want to. But you're right. My mom and grandma and all the aunts, all like my mom is one of 4 sisters. They're called the Johnson sisters, and like all of them walk through life like Julia Andrews with a little song in their heart and a spring in their step. They're just like really joy filled, utterly joy filled human beings. and they make the world better. They do.
I love it.
They
I love
make
it.
the world more joy-filled and a lighter and brighter place because they are constantly making those bids of friendship to others with the stranger. And I'm grateful to them for that example, even though I imperfectly live up to it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. That's our homework.
Lexi, I'm going to jump to a question about schools in a moment. First, I know we are getting a little bit short on time. I wanted to thank you for including two things that my mother would appreciate. One was Tim Keller. There's a quote by him in there, and she just sent me a sermon by Tim Keller a few weeks ago to listen to, so I thought that was a great connection. She loved that show you mentioned, Keeping Up Appearances, and Hyacinth.
That's my grandmother's favorite show, Bouquet.
Yes.
Hello,
Yes,
Mrs.
it's
Bucket.
Bouquet.
No, it's Bouquet.
Hyacinth. Yes, there's my Hyacinth
She's
voice.
hysterical. No.
Anyway, those are great connections in the book, and my mom would love those parts.
Get her a copy, Eric, and then
I
read the
will.
book with her. Do you hear about
I
the
will.
reading guide? I have the reading guide.
I saw that.
So you can read it together, reread it personally, or read it with a friend.
That is great. That is great bonding. Lexi, how should schools teach civility?
I have a whole chapter on education
You do.
for this reason. And I specifically kind of group education in schools and home life together, because without question, a parent is their child's first, best, and most important teacher. And, a parent delegates that authority as being their child's most important teacher to a school, to a classroom, and there has to be that sort of partnership, that alignment of values, of what happens in the school being corroborated outside the school, and vice versa. And there, in traditional pedagogy, there are three important components. There is example, and there's practice, and there's storytelling as well. But it's orthopraxy in essence, I guess. We'll focus on two: orthopraxy and orthodoxy. Orthopraxy is right belief. And it's like getting the heart right. That's what civility focuses on. It says, going through the motions is not enough. Like, what I argue for in civility is the external stuff, just doing the right thing, saying the right thing, the realm of politeness, that's not enough. We need to under a transformation of our heart. Like, I call my book a humanistic manifesto, extolling the profound gift of being human in our deeply divided times, where we are quick to dehumanize people we don't like, we disagree with, that who can't do things for us. So, getting the heart thing right, cultivating in our heart the correct doxa, the orthodoxy of civility, which is seeing other human beings fundamentally and the fullness of who they are, beings with dignity, worth, and worthy of respect, even when we don't like them. And then from that orthopraxy, that an orthopraxy is right practice, like doing and saying the right thing because your heart is in the right place. And so as educators, as teachers, it's important to not just focus on the external stuff. That's the easy thing to do, right? It's easy to just focus on students doing and saying and going through the motions. But that's actually, not sufficient. And how do we do that? We overtly teach it, we tell stories about it, and importantly, we model it for our family. I just wrote an article in USA Today a few weeks ago. Yes, my friend Jonathan Haidt, who I think one of you said you found a book through, he has this book out, Anxious Generation, and he had me look at chapters of the book before it came out, and just one of my thoughts as a young mom with young children, what did I think? And I took away from the book, like, we're also already very low tech in our home. But I was so convicted reading that, like, it's not enough just to say, okay, my kids are never going to have a cell phone and they're never going to have Facebook.
Sure.
It's not enough, because that doesn't get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is they're going to always want those things if they see every adult in their life obsessed with those things. And I think that, honestly, not to at all disparage Jonathan Haidt's important work, I think it's just incomplete to only focus on how kids are using or not having access to these technologies and medias without talking about how obsessed and these platforms are corrupting us as well. We are distracted. We are not present. We are, it is an epidemic. We're disconnected from our kids, and they are only seeing us glued to these devices. And I do this so imperfectly. It's like, at my worst days, it's like I've been half on my phone, half with my kids, and not present fully with either. No creative work or deep thinking, and no full quality presence with them either. And I've done both, my calling my vocation and my kids a profound disservice. And I'm just left feeling like blah. And that's just the reality of, I think an extension of the cult of efficiency. We're trying to cram more in every single moment, and we're able to, because these technologies are so incredible.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I wrote this article about how we are not modeling correct use of technology for our children well. And that is essential if we want for them to take us seriously. We can't just do as I say, not as I do. We have to live that out and say, no, like, focus on your work and don't be on social media when we're like glued to our email over.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. Lexi, I got a question for you. I can't remember if this is in your book or not, but are you familiar? We're all familiar with the golden rule, correct? I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's been around for a couple thousand years.
Yes.
Lexi, I can't remember. Did you mention the platinum rule in your book?
I don't think I do. Tell me about it.
Well, okay. So, Lexi, what's the golden rule?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
So there's a theory that that's exceedingly flawed. That we should, where it's a good place to start, but it's a little self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe the anecdote, and maybe we've been living the golden rule, maybe we need to start evolving to the platinum rule, which is instead of treating people how we want to be treated, I need to treat Lexi how she needs to be treated.
Yeah.
And have a little bit more perspective than just seeing the world through my lens, which it could be exceedingly flawed and very, myopic. But if I can get to know Lexi, porch with her a little bit, and start helping and seeing her through her perspective, maybe we could be a little bit more civil. So maybe the golden rule is polite, but the platinum rule is a little bit more civil. I don't know what your thoughts are with that.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if I mentioned the golden rule in my book. Do I? You guys have
I don't recall it.
And
I thought it could be in there. It would fit somewhere in there.
Right. I mean, yeah. What's coming to mind is this quote from Herodotus, and I want to, and he's, a father of history and a Greek thinker and historian. And he has this really, really interesting insight. I wonder if it got cut. I wonder if it did. Where I have this document on my book called Profiles of Civility. And it was like my research, kind of my commonplace book. And Herodotus has this insight about burial rituals. And he says, it's easy to, condemn how the Indians bury their people and how the Persians bury their people. And, but in fact, it requires humility and self-awareness to say, like, to each their own. The French have a great saying, chacun son goût, that there's no accounting for taste. But like, I think you do have an interesting point related to putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's fundamentally empathy, right? Like, it's not just saying,
Exactly.
I want this situation. It's like, what is actually going to bless and help this other person feel seen. So
yeah,
it's a good point.
Lexi, last question.
Yes.
First, people can find you again, get your book. They should join the Civic Renaissance.
Yes, they should.
And so to kind of wrap it up with, we like to have our guests provide words of encouragement for educators, and I want to have you do that. In your book, towards the end, you use the phrase, the mellifluous echo of the magnanimous soul, which I loved. How can our teachers be part of that mellifluous echo?
Oh, it's such a lovely question. Thanks, Eric. So I talk about my grandmother, Margaret, who I've already alluded to. And it's funny that Nathaniel asked me about Larry David at the beginning. I just read an article that'll come out in the Globe and Mail in a few weeks, one of Canada's largest newspapers, about Larry David and my grandmother Margaret. So it was just kind of reflecting on this and putting them in dialogue. So and just using them as archetypes to embody the mellifluous echo of the magnanimous soul, and the opposite of that, which is vicious cycles. Larry David is someone, as we talked about, who walks into any situation and says, how can I make this situation and everyone around me exactly how I want them to be? And he's willing to make things uncomfortable for everyone in order to do that. He's willing to win fights and, come out on top, but he's alone. Fundamentally, he's alone and empty. And that's like the conceit of the show, that he's the butt of his own joke. Like, he will act that way and always is made to look the fool. Like, it always doesn't end well for him. But it doesn't stop him from doing it, time and time again, like 11 seasons into it, like still coming back, and he's not learning any lessons. But my grandmother was someone who did the opposite. Like, she would go into a situation and she would say, how do I serve here? How do I make this better? And I use this framework from Aristotle of the magnanimous soul. And the concept of Aristotle's magnanimous soul was essentially a great souled person, someone who was so self-composed and so self-contained and possessed that they could be utterly self-forgetful when out in the marketplace of life with others. Whereas Larry David is walking in and all he's thinking about is himself. You know, my grandmother was utterly self-forgetful and was totally free to give and to pour into the lives of others. For example, she would go to the grocery store, buy a massive bouquet of flowers, and she would come home and then, you know, turn them into smaller bouquets, tie them with a little ribbon, and then just go knock on neighbors' doors, or, you know, go on long walks throughout our neighborhood and just give them away. Like, oh, I thought this might brighten your day. And she was the kind of person who would spontaneously call people to say, hey, I was thinking of you, or this made me think of you. I thought you'd enjoy this. And she was just unbelievably kind and thoughtful, and in 1,000 unseen microscopic ways every day. Like, we will never see this side of eternity, the positive impact that she had in the world, the number of people she blessed, the number of strangers on airplanes that she befriended and
Sure.
made them feel seen and known and made their day better, and made their lives better. We will never know, just as we'll never know the inverse. How many people like Larry David walk around broken and breaking people in turn, how that perpetuates a vicious cycle too. You know, displacing that negative emotion, bringing that into the next. It's like the kicking the cat, the vicious cycle where, but so the mellifluous echo of the magnanimous soul is the inverse of the sort of vicious cycle kicking the cat. It's like how one person, through their small minute by minute decisions to seek the good of others, to make the world a better place, that good creates a mellifluous echo that reverberates across time, across place, across generations. You know, my mother raised her 4 daughters and son that way, and they all had children and raised them that way, just to kind of go above and beyond. In Catholic theology, there's this concept of supererogatory, above and beyond acts of goodness and graciousness that give you like bonus points, you know. But like, there are some things that we owe to others and some things that are just like exceptionally above and beyond thoughtful. And my grandma was just one of those people who would go out of her way to make people feel seen and known and loved, and the world is better for it, even though it's an unquantifiable good. It's not a good that policymakers have any control over. You can't pass a law to say, be thoughtful and hospitable and kind and gracious in all these ways, right? Like, that wouldn't work. This is the beauty and challenge of civility, that it's voluntary. There's no levers for it. Can't be micromanaged, can't be scaled like that. And so my message to teachers is the small things matter. Like, people are watching you in the small ways, and the small things you do, the small ways you build matter, and you don't know how the small things might be that tipping point, you know, to change the trajectory. And I love those stories of kids who share about that one teacher who changed their life, right? But that teacher did that through lots of small things. And, you know, I love my history teacher, Mr. Jorgensen, in IB history, and in my high school, who I always loved ideas, but he made me fall in love with history. And I'll always remember him and be grateful to him for introducing me to something that I love. And, you know, my dad, a very formative intellectual influence, he made me take the IB history class, even though it meant I would definitely get a worse grade. I was going to take IB psychology, which was guaranteed to give me a 7. 7 was like the highest in IB. But, you know, let's have another conversation about how broken schools are one day. Like, grades are the worst. Like, you know,
We'll get you back on.
yeah.
We'll get you back
But
on.
anyway, I took the lesser grade in history. I did not do very well in that class, but I loved it. And it, you know, I've written a book on history, and I'm a small p public historian in that. Like, I love storytelling. I love unearthing these stories of incredible people from the past, and showing how their and why their stories and lives matter today, because they make my life better, and I hope that they make other people's lives better too. So the small things matter. Sorry, Eric, all that to say, the small things matter way more than we realize, and we have way more power to hurt or to help than we recognize.
Awesome. Lexi Hudson, man, what an Bash. We got to meet Bash. We got to talk about your family. We know we're going to talk to strangers. We're going to porch on the plane. That's our homework, right?
No promises, no promises.
Oh, it's your homework. It's your homework, right? And then I'm going to go watch some Curb Your Enthusiasm more. And as we get out of here, my favorite episode is when he goes to the yoga studio and they ask him to namaste, and he's like, I'm not really a namaste.
Oh my
guy.
gosh. I know.
So with that, namaste, Dr. Worster, Lexi Hudson, thank you so much for joining us on the Community Connection. Take care.
Great to be here. Thanks, guys.